let's talk a little bit more about how bad the Seahawks were last year and how bad they may be this coming year. 2021 came in with very elevated expectations, which is certainly not unjustified. With Russell Wilson at quarterback, never missed the playoffs until 2021. So came in with a win expectation of 10, went 7-10, so missed by 3 games, went 9-8 ATS, a $100 unit better betting the Seahawks on the money line and spread, lost about $400. Pythag had them around 9. Our Pythag 2.0 model had them close to 9, a little bit less than that. And we can kind of see from the power ranking volatility chart, start off with those very elevated expectations, and it was kind of a slow drip lower over the course of the season. And as people tried to kind of keep leaning into them, keep trying to buy the dip, you kind of kept getting let down. I know there were certainly some dip buyers in that Packers game, and then in week 10, and in that Cardinals game in week 11, certainly one of the more popular games where people were leaning into the Seahawks. And then I think it was a Thursday game away against Washington on week 12 there, where the broader public loved the Seahawks at -1.5 on the road. There's a very disappointing Washington team. And that was the game where Russell Wilson, like kind of everyone is expecting him to bounce back. The team just never put it together. Russell Wilson never truly put it together either after coming back from some of his injuries from earlier in the season.
I think this chart raises a very interesting question, which is if you look at where the Seahawks were at their lowest point last year, at 19-20, and this is either with a very hurt Russell Wilson or no Russell Wilson at all. Are the Seahawks power ranked at a 20th team now? What has really changed that's kind of moved them down 7, 8, 9 spots? Or is this initial mark from the middle of last season really just off?
They are a bottom 4 or 5 team in the league, in my opinion. And, occasionally when you see those bottom tier teams, you can say this team might be able to take a leap. I just don't see that with the Seahawks team.
Dude, I like the point that you bring out is, well, they bottomed around 20 in 2021. And how much different are they this year, although the market's dropped them 10 spots? What I would say is this is probably the Russell Wilson premium. That's like no matter how bad he looked, he was still going to command a certain amount of respect and elevate this team from a media perception and a power ranking perspective. 10 spots, probably, yeah. When we kind of look at the game-by-game breakdown from 2021, this was something that I was really surprised about, is that I feel like there's this perception, at least it was mine, that Russell Wilson missed a lot more games than he actually did. So Geno Smith came in, played those 3 games relatively early on, so week 6, 7, 8. And that's very early in the season. You're barely halfway through, not even yet. And then Wilson finished the last 9 games in the last more than 2 months, and they still just did not perform well. And I was with you, Yanni, where I was thinking, before I kind of did a little bit more research on how they performed last year, I was thinking that this should be probably one of the worst teams, if not the worst team. One, because I'm really down on Pete Carroll as well. I think the loss of Russell Wilson is going to expose Pete Carroll for being one of the worst coaches in the NFL, and we're going to see it play out this year. This will be his last year. He signed through 2024, but I think this is certainly his last year, and they're going to go full-blown rebuild after this. I'm surprised that they just didn't do it this year. When you hear commentary from Pete Carroll, he's not framing it as a rebuild year. Obviously, the dude's like 70 years old. He doesn't want to do a rebuild either. And he's saying that they're still competing for a championship. I mean, it's great for sentiment, but no one believes that.
Baker Mayfield was on the market. Jimmy Garoppolo was on the market. They did not make those trades. I do think they know they're tanking. Pete Carroll is just trying to save his reputation here as the players coach.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely could be. And one of the caveats I'm going to put is maybe I'm wrong about Pete Carroll, because I look at some of these max leads, okay? So how competitive were the Seahawks in games last year? I mean, 18, 15, 10, 15, 7, 7, 24, 7, 20, 7, 10, 31, 11. I mean, not only were they competitive in a lot of games, I mean, they had double-digit leads in a lot of games. When we actually look at the mean margin, so we look at how much were they winning or losing by, multiplied by the time that they held that lead or deficit. And on average, they should have won 10 games. And so that means they just blew a lot of games. And Russell Wilson not playing well. I mean, look at these EPAs. -21, -5, -12. I mean, there was one that they lost at home versus the Bears.
Pete Carroll's special is to lose games that you shouldn't be losing just for being ultra conservative. And the Seahawks were really good in kind of the span where Wilson wasn't actually hurt. If you look at just like the mean margins and the max leads, like they were nothing without Russell Wilson.
The column that's really interesting to me is the opposing QB. Wentz, Tannehill, Cousins, Garoppolo, an old Roethlisberger, Winston, Lawrence, McCoy, Heineke, Davis Mills, Nick Foles, Tim Boyle. I mean, these are bad quarterbacks that they were playing against here, and they still only scratched out 7 wins with that. I mean, this team is in a rebuilding mode, whether they want to admit it or not. And Jude, I think your point was great. They could have mildly upgraded by bringing in Baker Mayfield or Jimmy Garoppolo. They chose not to do that, which leads me to believe they don't believe they can win.
What's difficult for me to comprehend, again, is where Pete Carroll is at the stage in his life. I mean, he can't absorb a 3 or 4 year rebuild. And this team is nowhere near like flipping the switch and like turning this around in a year. Not only, to your point around, did they not make a move in the quarterback market, but they really didn't make any moves. Basically, Drew Lock, who they traded for, didn't even sign, and Noah Fant. And lost a lot. Obviously, Russell Wilson, Bobby Wagner, their quarterback on defense. So lost both their quarterbacks, essentially. And Dwayne Brown, I know you've been posting a lot, Jude, about how good Dwayne Brown is. Moving into 2022 is, we're at the stage, we just had one preseason game. Does it matter who's going to be the starting quarterback here? First of all, who do you think is going to be the starting quarterback? And then, does it matter? To me, it doesn't matter. Like, now that there is no Russell Wilson, I think Pete Carroll can be who he always wanted to be, which is a ultra-conservative coach, as Jude, as you implied earlier as well. And now he's not going to have any pressure of having that kind of superstar quarterback where everyone's going to say, let Russ cook, let Russ cook, let Russ cook. And now no one's going to be asking to let Drew Lock cook or Geno Smith cook. And that's why one of your kind of alt bets that you called out, Jude, that I think could potentially be really attractive is the fewest points scored at plus 750. So they already had like one of the least, the fewest amount of offensive plays last year. And that was with Russell Wilson. And now they know they don't have a good quarterback. So now it puts even less pressure for you to be aggressive. You can really lean on the run. And so again, just going to milk clock. And then even when they are on offense, are they going to score? So I love that. I love fewest points at plus 750.
I think it's a good bet, and I really love it if it's Geno Smith there.
So our PyTag 2.0 model doesn't like any bet for the Seahawks this year. They're facing the 11th hardest strength of schedule. And when I was kind of looking at this, pretty much every team in this division ostensibly and technically has a tough strength of schedule because they're all playing one another. Net rest plus 1 day. So essentially not really a factor. And the mean spread for them is around +4, so well over a field goal. And we can kind of see they're pretty much underdogs in every single game, except versus some of the worst teams in the league. And then the rest are very heavy underdogs. And they're playing some of the best teams in the league. Obviously got to play everyone in their division twice, but also got to play the Broncos, the Saints, the Chargers, the Bucks, the Rams, the Chiefs. I mean, they're playing every single of the best teams. So when you combine that with being potentially one of the worst teams in football, yeah, I think, and again, if my thesis comes to fruition around Pete Carroll actually being one of the worst coaches in the NFL, and he gets exposed for being that this season, I don't like many unders when it's this low, but the Seahawks look really bad and also have an extremely tough division. Anything else that you guys want to kind of close on before we move on? Seahawks are bad. Consensus.